Many of you know that my grandfather, Ernst Lorge of blessed memory, was a rabbi, and some of you also have come to learn that he was a storyteller. Jewish folk tales were a passion of his, a passion that he passed down to the generations of my family. And though they're not Midrash or Talmud or Torah, Jewish folk tales are not children's stories, even though children's hearts are often the ones most open to the truths and teachings of these stories. So I try to tell one of his stories, the ones that he loved to tell, each year. And this was one of his favorites that he often told during these fall holidays. In a quiet and sleepy village somewhere in Eastern Europe, there is a ruin of a synagogue. Today, birds and squirrels live in the eaves and walls, and the roof is mostly fallen in, exposing the interior of the sanctuary to weather and nature. The floors have seen so many steps and shuffles and hakafot that they're worn, in some places worn all the way down to the earth beneath. Plants and weeds grow in the floor, and vines cover the Aron HaKodesh, the Holy Ark, where once Sifrei Torah were kept. And the stone steps that lead up to the entrance of this synagogue are cracked, and all around the building, trees and grass grow wild. It's not surprising, therefore, that few come to the synagogue today. But those who do often come when it's raining, when you can hear the water drip, drip, dripping through the roof into the sanctuary, and when it looks like the building itself is crying. Some say this is why the synagogue is called the Weeping Synagogue. But the locals know better. They know that that's not really the origin of the name. If you ask them, they'll tell you that it's named the Weeping Synagogue because if you go there at night or very early in the morning, you can actually hear the sound of weeping. You can hear the building itself crying for what was and what could have been. Before the synagogue was abandoned, it stood tall and proud. Not quite as tall and proud as this synagogue, but tall and proud. The synagogue was used by many in the village, but one man alone was there day and night. He was a pious rabbi. He studied all day and most of the night too. And yes, he studied Talmud and Torah, commentaries, Midrash, mysticism, day in and day out. When everyone else in the village was sleeping, he was still there, awake and hunched over a book, reading by candlelight. The rabbi had no house, no family, no friends. You see, he was not the community rabbi. He didn't really busy himself with the goings-on of others. Now, this rabbi would perhaps, if you were lucky, exchange some pleasantries with those of you who came to offer up your prayers when it was time, but that was really it. His life was his study, and his study was his prayer. He spent all of his time unlocking the secrets of the tradition. One night, at the turn of midnight, a most holy hour, as he sat at the table in the synagogue studying a page, the Aron HaKodesh began to glow. Now the rabbi looked up from his tome. He was not in the habit of falling asleep while studying, but thought perhaps this was a dream. But then, a bat kol, a heavenly voice, issued out of the Aron HaKodesh and said, "Your piety, Rabbi, has been noted in the heavens. Because of it, you have been granted a single wish. One wish, no matter what it is. Speak quickly, for the moment is passing." The rabbi, ever a thoughtful man, sat and studied the situation. "I'm poor," was his first thought. "I have nothing. Life could certainly be easier. Perhaps I'll ask for riches. Do you think that's what he asked for, though? No, of course that's not what he asked for. Almost as soon as he thought that one thought, he dismissed it. Riches lead to greed, he said. And I have the Torah, the greatest treasure one can possess. Power, then, he thought. For all of my studying, I am unknown. I do not teach students. I do not run a Beit Midrash. I give no pronouncements of law. But very quickly he dismissed and rejected this idea as well. Power, he thought, too often brings one to cruelty. Wisdom, then, came into his mind. What worthier wish could there be than to request wisdom from the source of wisdom? But this too he dismissed, checking this inclination. That would be an unworthy request, he said to himself. The Torah itself is the source of all wisdom, and I study it day and night. Having cataloged his thoughts and gone through his processes, finally, in the span of seconds, really, he whispered to himself, no, I have nothing to wish for. I am content. God need give me nothing but the Torah I already possess. And he relaxed. He let out the breath he had been holding in. He had passed the divine test, avoided all of the temptations. But at that moment, he heard a sobbing sound from inside of the ark. And once again, the Bat Kol, the holy voice, spoke to him. You unfortunate man, you could have wished for peace. You could have wished for an end to human suffering. You could have asked for the salvation of the world that you wait for. But you thought only of yourself. The next morning, when the synagogue opened for prayer, the people came in and found that the pious rabbi was gone. Days passed, weeks, months. Truth be told, he was never seen again. No one knows for sure what happened to him, but most say that he wanders the world now, dedicating himself to repairing creation, working tirelessly to make up for the opportunity that he squandered. But one thing we know for sure. From that moment on, the sanctuary felt different, eerie. People began to avoid it. You could almost hear the sound of weeping if you listened carefully in the evenings and in the mornings. And soon it was abandoned altogether. It began to be called the Weeping Synagogue. As we begin this new year, standing between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, we commit ourselves to being more than the rabbi in the story. As quickly as we break our fast, at least I anyway, find myself in old habits. We're easily lost in our own problems, in our own studies, in our own work, in our own routine, and tune out the needs around us. But as we prepare to enter into the open walls of our sukkah, we remember the world beyond our homes and all of our responsibilities there. May we find the hurt around us and work to relieve it. May we find the loneliness and seek to dispel it. May we find the grief and try our best to comfort it. May we seek the brokenness and may we dare to repair it.